14 is concerned, DeMar DeRozan is, strengthening his claim for, the MVP with 15 points and 4 rebounds and 8 assists in the 3 minutes against Washington Wizards. DeMar DeRozan didn't have his best shooting night, but he still managed to control the game by dishing out some dimes. What do you have to say about DeMar DeRozan? First of all, it been impressive, and at the same time, his team too, having a good run, nine straight win for them, holding sway at the Eastern Conference.
Well, I think that DeMar has really, we know that DeMar is a very good player. We know that he's a mid-range master. He's not necessarily the greatest three-point shooter on your team, but how he gets open shots, in mid-range, is a very rare skill that you don't see as much now in today's game. But he's very adept at getting to the mid-range, and he's been playing very well. And we also saw him make history not long ago. He hit two game-winning shots.
Yeah.
He did one against the Pacers, in which he played very well, and he also had one against the Wizards. When they played in Washington as well. So he has been on fire recently, and he's been very poised in his performances, and we've seen that not only just looking at the stats, but you're also looking at the effort. We're also with his teammates, guys like Nikola Vucevic also pitching in, thinking that he should also be in that MVP race as well, with guys like KD, Giannis, and Steph. But I think that he's made incredible strides in his game. And I think that with Chicago, I think he's been in the spotlight, and he's going to continue to shine. And this is a team that's obviously getting to the playoffs, in my opinion. And this is a team that you're looking at this guy as one of their focal points, playing at that forward position, next to Zach LaVine, who are two great scorers. So that's something to look at as well.
Well, what do you think is actually the secret as to why they're playing like this? Dominating, their opponents, and it shows how prepared they are. But I don't really know the secrets of this Chicago Bulls team. Is it the fact that have Zach LaVine playing very well, alongside DeMar DeRozan? It seems like they are at the best at the moment, playing their best basketball. I would like to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Well, I think that it really doesn't come down to how DeMar and Zach LaVine play, but I think it comes down to their center, which is Nikola Vucevic, because what he does, off the ball, it doesn't show up in the statistics, but when you look at how their floor spacing works, and how you have a guy like Nikola Vucevic, who can, number one, score in the paint, who has a post game, and number three, he also has an outside shot. That results in their center for the opposite team having to be drawn out to the outside, which opens up for easy points for the guards to score.
Yeah.
Because of that, that's going to open up the floor and result in easy cuts, as well as, and when you have to be aware of those cuts that players are making, that means that Zach and DeMar can be able to isolate in the paint as well,
Yeah.
which generates points for this team, which is why they're such a high scoring team, as you see.
All right, let's talk about Dosunmu, Ayo Dosunmu. He got 19 points in this game. Ayo and Kobe actually combined for 39 points off the bench for them, and they're able to keep Chicago in front. For Dosunmu, he's had a career high 18 points on 7 of 9 shooting. He only missed 1 in 4 attempts from the deep, and it's actually an impressive one considering how we try to push those guys who are of Nigerian descent. So I would like you to actually elaborate on the Sumoza performance on the night.
Well, I think he played very well. 18 points on 3 or 4 from three-point range.
Yeah.
That's very good for him. The efficiency level is also there, and I think it's also been there since I've been watching him since he was in college.
Yeah.
And he played for Illinois as well. I think that he's a very solid addition for the Chicago Bulls, and I think that he's one of those guys who can supply points off the bench. I think he's a guy kind of like who reminds me of a guy like Fred VanVleet. I think that his ability to score, whether it be off ball or when Zach and Demar generate focus onto themselves,
Yeah.
which results for open shots for Ayo. I think that it also generates points for the team as well. And his defense also has been pretty solid. And Kobe White has also been a very good hustle player who also generates points from scoring off of shooting opportunities.
All right, very well said, Isaac. We still have so much to talk about on the show, but right now we need to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get to talk about Tyler Hero and Yusuf Nokish, getting fined for $25 million. We'll talk about that when we come back from this short break. I think $25 million. All right, welcome back to the show. It's still above the rim. Before we went on that short break, we said something about Tyler Hero and Yusuf Nurkic, getting fined $25,000. I said $25 million, and I was actually wondering how much are they getting as their salary. So here to correct it is $25,000, not $25 million, as I said before the break. But before we continue, Isaac, I would like you to say something on that. There was an altercation, in that game between Miami Heat and his team, talking about Tyler Hero and Nokish. They said they were the one that actually started the whole fracas and getting fined at the end of the day. Do you think that was actually the right thing to do? From the management, from the NBA at the end of the day.
Well, I think you could say that it is fair, but I think that what initiated it was Tyler. Well, the person who initiated it was Tyler Hero.
Yeah.
In that situation, what had happened was the game. It was a late game situation, and Yusuf Nurkic set a screen for his teammate, and I don't think there was no clear communication between Tyler Hero and his teammates in whether he was going to avoid the screen. And because of that, he got pancaked hard in that screen, and which caused him to fall down to the ground. And he thought that it was a dirty play by Yusuf Nurkic. But in all honesty, I think that it comes down to bad communication between Tyler Hero and his teammate who was closest to him. And because of that, Tyler Hero shoved him, and it led to Yusuf Nurkic also, trying to get a jab at him.
Yeah.
And, they had to be separated. And eventually they were given technical fouls and eventually ejected from the game as well. So, you could say that it goes both ways. But if I had someone to blame mainly for what had happened on the altercation, it'd mainly be Tyler Hero because of, how he initiated the situation and how he was mainly at fault with his teammate.
All right, let's talk about the return of Kyrie. Kyrie Irving is back.
Yeah.
He returned in that game against Indiana Pacers for his first game, since the 2020-2021 season, when, they played in the playoff. I think that was the last, action he had as far as basketball is concerned. But he's back. In that game against Indiana Pacers, he scored 22 points, which is not bad for a player who is just returning, to the court. I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that he played very well. He didn't have the outside shot going, and definitely those long 2 pointers weren't going for him. But I think that the 12 footers were really efficient scoring for him. Someone who's coming back since playing who last played in June. June, May, June, and he's coming back now in January. I think that it was a pretty good performance from him, and we saw how just a glimpse of how great of a finisher he is, around the rim. And I think that he's, the greatest finisher around the rim of all time, in my opinion. I think that he was really aggressive and he impacted the game in, multiple ways, as well as, Kevin Durant also, we talk about, how inefficient, a guy like James Harden may be for your team, and how he has some inconsistencies, but he has also stepped it up for as a point guard. And you have a guy like Kevin Durant who I like to call Mr. Efficiency or Mr. Consistency, because he had 39 points in that game, and those were some of the most quiet 39-point games I've ever seen. And he's a really good player for their team, and he's one of the greatest scorers of all time as well. And when you have all three of these guys on one team, you can see just how great this team is. And obviously this is a team that's going to make a lot of noise, and it's definitely a warning. And I think that Kyrie Irving has sent a message to the NBA.
All right, talking about being able to keep Kyrie Irving in the team, and talking about how important he is to the team. He played the last time, and they were able to win with all that buzz. They played against Milwaukee Bucks this morning. They lost in that game. Milwaukee Bucks are winning by 121 to 109 points, and this result has got the likes of Kevin Durant talking, and even the coach of the team talking about how important or how they really want Kyrie to be part of the team, both when they're playing at home, when they're playing away from home. But as it stands now, we know the rule regarding players who have remained unvaccinated as far as the state of New York is concerned. So it means that he's not eligible to play in New York, but he can play when they're on the road. But right now, his teammates, talking about Kevin Durant, is talking, and the coach is actually talking. Kevin Durant actually, says something about, he can't actually, force Kyrie, to get vaccinated at the end of the day. And the coach, talking about how he would love to have, Kyrie playing for him, be it in New York or when they're on the road. Your take on that?
Well, I think that his impact was definitely missed in that game. Obviously, he can't play in these home games because of the New York vaccination rules, as you said. And they definitely needed him, because there was a stretch where Giannis Antetokounmpo had 3 fouls in the second quarter, and that was a point where as a team, Brooklyn should, take over with the offensive power that they have. Yeah. They should, be able to make a run. They were losing by about like 8 points in that game, but they should have been able to make a run in order to, at least have a lead before Giannis comes back, to make his impact on the lead. But they weren't able to capitalize, and that's because because of the lack of scoring that they have, because there's no Kyrie Irving. So that's definitely a problem for them on their teams. And in their last 5 games, I think they've lost their last 5 home games, which is definitely a big concern. And when you have Kyrie that's not allowed to play in these games because of the vaccination rule, you have to, number one, create a game plan, and also have, a guy like you, the usage rate of, Kevin Durant is still going to be very high because of that as well. Yeah. So, and as we talked about, before we went on the Christmas break, we talked about how, when you have Kevin Durant at a high usage rate, it usually leads to injuries. We saw that, with his 2014 MVP season, and the next season he got injured. So that was that's definitely a big concern for this Nets team, and that's something that you obviously you want to push for him to be playing in these home games, but right now you can only settle for the road games, and what you need to do now is load management as a team. And Giannis also played very well for his side with 31 points and on 9 assists and 7 rebounds. So that was very solid for him as well. And I think that his team, really contributed as well. And, with role players like Bobby Portis as well, and Jordan Nwora also playing very well for their team. 6 players on their team, were in double-digit figures. So this clearly goes to show, number one, the defensive issues that they have, that the Nets are having, as well as, offensive, creation of, offense as well for their team.
Well, let's talk about their opponents, Milwaukee Bucks. They have Giannis back in the team, and in this game, he was able to prove his importance, as far as that, Milwaukee Bucks is concerned. But then another cause for worry for them, I actually feel if Giannis is not in this team, they tend to falter. You don't get to see the best of this team, just like we keep talking about, teams like Chicago Bulls. They have Vucevic, you have, the likes of DeMar DeRozan, you have Zach LaVine, all playing at their best. But in this team, in this particular franchise, talking about Milwaukee Bucks, whenever Giannis is not in the game, you don't get to see, that's Milwaukee Bucks, a Milwaukee Bucks that actually won that league title last season. Do you think they are also over-reliant on, on this guy, talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo?
Well, I think when Giannis is not playing, the responsibility of scoring is, it falls on the shoulders of a guy like Chris Middleton. We saw, in the playoffs when Giannis went down with the hyperextended left knee in the Eastern Conference Finals, we saw how, the load had to be, shared among their teammates, and how, Chris Middleton had to take the helms as the primary, ball handler. He and Jrue Holiday as well. But obviously, when you have, a guy like Giannis who, number one, can handle the ball, being 6'11", can bully anyone in the paint, and then also is developing his outside shot, which I think is, starting to blossom a little bit more. You're definitely going to, have, a lot of problems in, how you're going to generate points for your team when he's not on the floor. Yeah. So, and with a guy like Chris Middleton, you may have some inconsistencies with him in some games. He may give you a 40-point game some days, and then some days he may give you a game that's only 13 points and maybe 5 assists. So that's obviously, something that you look at from a Milwaukee standpoint. And, the role players might not also fulfill, their responsibilities in a game because their leader is not on the court as well. So that's obviously something that, Budenholzer has to work on. And I think that another concern they've had is that they also got rid of DeMarcus Cousins recently. That's a really big loss for them because DeMarcus Cousins was playing for them on minimum wage, and he was playing very efficiently for their team as a role player. And I think that yes, they won this game against the Nets, but when they have those management issues, or when Giannis is injured, that's gonna come back to bite them. And I think that getting rid of DeMarcus Cousins was a big problem, and I think that it's a really big mistake they made.
All right, let's talk about Jordan Nwora. How impressive was he on that night?
Well, he's always very impressive to me when I see him because he has a really nice outside shot that, when Giannis draws in defenders, you can always kick it to him. And he was very efficient, as we saw, 5 of 11 with, making half of his three-pointers, with three three-pointers. I think that he was very aggressive in how he was able to get to the rim, and we saw him have 13 points. And whenever Jordan Nwora is playing very well, you can see how the team has a bounce in its step, and he's a very energetic player who gives you good hustle plays, and he's also a very good shooter from the outside. So when you have a guy like Chris Middleton who can't make those buckets for you, you can always rely on a guy like Jordan Nwora to be an outside shooter.
Oh, very well said. At this point, we'll take another short break, and when we come back, we'll get to talk about some of these results coming from yesterday games. We've already talked about some of them already. Milwaukee Bucks against Brooklyn Nets, and interesting results coming from the NBA. We'll talk about all that when we come back from this short break. right, welcome back. It's still your favorite basketball show, Above the Rim, where we give you in-depth analysis about what's going on in the NBA. Before we talk about the results, something quite amazing happened in that game. The Knicks playing against Boston Celtic. A player on the Knicks actually got the game winner, making it the 10th game winner, for the season. I would like you to, elaborate about that game, Knicks and Boston Celtic.
Well, the Celtics jumped out to an early lead, in that first quarter, and you could see that some things weren't sticking for their team, but Evan Fournier came to a big light. It was a big player for their team. He had 41 points in that game, and it was a career high for him. And I think that he was he hit some crazy shots, especially in the end of the fourth quarter, near the end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And what had happened was the Knicks had overcome a 24-point lead, 24-point deficit in the second quarter, and they were able to rally into this win, which was very big for them. And you have a guy like Jason Tatum. We've talked about him, multiple times, and he had 36 points in that game,
Yeah.
and he hit some big clutch shots as well for his team. But I think that the Knicks are very good in number one management, and also how they were able to keep their calm and also continuously play through the crowd. Playing in New York is with how the crowd was buzzing. They're always a team that's able to play through their crowd as well, which is which is something that you also look at. And you saw guys like Julius Randle and Evan Fournier, who came up big for their team. Emmanuel quickly as well. We've talked about how he's able to get to the paint, and how he was also able to do that very well this game. I think that it came down to that last shot where he hit that game winner, and this is the 10th game winner of the season already. And I think that it's very fun basketball to watch when you see I don't think any lead is safe this season, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that what problem that the Celtics are facing right now is their coach Ime Udoka.
Yeah.
We talked about how he's a Nigerian and how he's been making good strides as a coach, but I think that one problem he has had this season is how he hasn't been able to engage his bench. You have guys like Jason Tatum who are playing high minutes for his team, and he and Jaylen Brown are also playing high minutes for their team. But when you look at when you look at the box score, you can see multiple players who are not playing for this team, and you're just seeing guys who are coming off the bench playing 30 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Playing 40 minutes a game. You can see here from these stats, you can see that Jason Tatum is playing 40 minutes a game. You can see that guys like Jaylen Brown are also playing 35 minutes a game, and that's a high usage rate for their team. And you're seeing how many points they're generating and what they're trying to do for their team, and it's not enough. Udoka also talked about how they need leadership on their team to guide them in those moments, but I don't think that you can generate leadership when all your players are tired.
Yeah.
That's definitely been a concern for his team, I think. That's an adjustment that he should make for his team as well, and that also led to having fresh legs in terms of the New York Knicks, and they won that game by a convincing fashion.
All right, very well said, Isaac. Let's talk about the results from today's matches. Early this morning, Lakers actually extended their winning streak to 4 as LeBron James scored 32 points, made 9 assists in a 134 to 118 points win over Atlanta Hawks. Lakers seems to be getting back to their best. We talked about them, before Christmas, how they've been blowing hot and cold. But in recent times, I think this is the longest streak, as far as I can remember, that this Lakers team has been able to keep. I would like to hear your take on that.
Well, I think that definitely it's because of the dominance that LeBron has created for his team. In terms of LeBron and how his individual performance has been, this is his ninth game out of 10 where he has scored 30 plus points.
Yeah.
That's very impressive for a guy who's number one, 37 years old,
Yeah.
and number two, shouldering the offense at this age as well. So that's obviously, something impressive to look at. And Trey Young also played well for his team with a double-double, a near triple-double actually. But it goes to show just how dominant LeBron is. And he's playing center for his team. A guy like that's only 6'9", 250, he's already playing center for his team. And then you also have guys like Malik Monk who are also playing very well. He also had 29 points in that game, as well as, contributions from Taylor Horton-Tucker and Avery Bradley, who contributed with 21 points each. Outside shooting has also improved for their team with a guy like Carmelo Anthony. I did state, earlier that, the mid-range game has, died out. But I think this season it's actually come back a lot more, because guys like, Trey Young have taken a lot more mid-range shots recently. And I think it's definitely improved their shooting percentages. And, a guy like DeMar DeRozan and, guys like Carmelo Anthony, who are mid-range masters, are coming back and, performing at that same level, with that type of shot. And we saw that with Carmelo Anthony having 17 points in that game as well. So that was definitely something that you look at and you say that the mid-range game has also come back for their team. And you can also see that LeBron James at the age of 37, being in the league for 19 years, is still dominating at such a high level.
All right, let's talk about Utah Jazz. We just talked about Lakers, having, starting a kind of a streak, game streak. And for Utah Jazz, their 10-game winning streak on the road was brought to an end by the Toronto Raptors team, 122 to a 108-point win over Utah Jazz. This was a first triple-double of his career for Fred VanVleet. I'd like to hear your take on that. Utah Jazz, Toronto Raptors.
Well, obviously, Toronto is a very young, promising team. We've talked about that many times. And we've also seen how Fred VanVleet also plays for his team. And, with that 37-point triple-double, it also made a very big impact for his team, which, resulted in number one. Not only did his team, not only were his team engaged in that game, but they also, had the defense on lock as well. So, combining that with, players like, OG Anunoby, who put up 22 points for his team as well.
Yeah.
And, guys like the rookie Scotty Barnes, who's playing very well for his team, not only on the offensive end, but also on the defensive end. And obviously, you should expect this team to, come up with big points. Also you can see, guys like Gary Trent, who also come out, who also, are able to score, in bunches when he has to for his team. Even though he didn't do so in today's game, we also we know how big of a threat Toronto can be, and they're a real sleeper this year as well. I think that they're like a lot of people are sleeping on the impact they're making this season, and I think that they've been playing very well. They've been playing very high level of basketball. The record may not show it, but I think that this is a really young, promising team in the next couple of years.
All right, let's talk about Minnesota Timberwolves as they beat Oklahoma City Thunder by 135 to 105 points. Your take on that?
Well, D'Angelo Russell really played very well in that game. I believe he had 27 points in that game, only missing one shot, on 11 of 12 from the field, which was very good efficiency. And he also had a double-double in that game. So, also, engaging multiple teammates, and that leadership level has also come, to play with a guy like Anthony Edwards for his team. We talked about how he's a second-year player, and, we see the confidence that he and LaMelo Ball have always been showing. He also had 24 points in that game. And, a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns has also, come back. And he's also, been, their number one guy. And he also played very well in that game. I think that this is a team that, shows collective effort in how they're playing. I think that, maybe you may not see it, perfectly on the record, but you know, with a guy like Edward and also a guy like D'Angelo Russell, they you know they take the load off of a guy like Carl Anthony Towns, and they can, you know, shoulder the offense, and it leads to, you know, which leads to, you know, back to back wins, especially against the Thunder.
All right, so much to talk about, but unfortunately, this is where we have to drop anchor because our time has elapsed. And I want to thank Isaac for coming on the show. Isaac, it's always good to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. On behalf of the production crew, I want to say thank you for all our viewers. You know, for always being out there. You know, watching us. Thank you to the production crew as well for doing a very good job. So on this note, I say have a lovely weekend ahead.